Hello, everybody. Let's understand property law. And this is week 12. Today, we are going to understand the definition of property law, explain real, personal, and intellectual property, explain ownership rights of real property, understand the rights and obligations under a commercial lease, and distinguish between types of payment of personal property. Explain the importance of copyright, trademarks, patents, industrial design, and trade secrets in carrying a business. Now, if we talk about property law, let's understand the first thing. What is it? It is a field of law that includes a broad range of legal rights and duties in the areas of real property and personal property. It can be public property, government property, or private property. Property determines whether an individual or organization owns an item, has the right to possession of the item, has the right to transfer an interest in the item, and has the right to stop someone else from using the item or occupying the space. Did you know, generally in Canada, when marriage ends, family law allows the spouse of a business owner to receive equivalent of half the value of a business acquired during the marriage, subject to any other agreement between the couple. It means it is dividing everything in half. Whatever property you, or whatever earning you have after the marriage in the business. What is real, personal, and intellectual property? Now, let's understand what is real property. It includes land, that includes everything attached to it. Simply means the house, it includes the houses built in that land, fences, central air conditioning units as well, right? And most more commonly referred to as real estate. And another example of that could be when we are selling or buying a real estate and somebody uh, asks you to visit the space, they have to specifically tell us that what is covered, what not. If they don't specify it before selling, you assume that whatever you see in the property that is yours. Otherwise, they have speak about them that and they have to say that explicitly. Or property that is not real property. So there are two types of personal properties. One is tangible personal property. Second is intangible personal property. Let's try to understand these two things. First step of that is, can you just try to uh, think what is the tangible personal property? Maybe spend a minute to understand that. Think of think of that. Then we discuss. Yes, so we spent enough time to understand that. Now must you must have seen your Google searches and all. Now understand tangible proper personal property. That is things that you can touch and that are movable, right? So tangible property is something that you can touch, all right? And what is intangible personal property? Things that you cannot touch, that is reputation, goodwill, sometimes called choose in action. Now, understand what is intellectual property. Intellectual property is a form of asset that falls within the defining definition of intangible personal property. So you can go to cipo.ic.gc.ca to understand it well. And we can use end user license agreement to understand their intellectual property. Now understand the copyright. Copyright in Canada covers any original, literary, dramatic, musical, and artistic work, including computer programs, which are defined under the Act as literary work. Protection for copyright under the Federal Copyright Act gives the owner of the copyright the exclusive right to publish, perform in public, or reproduce the original work, and the ability to prevent another person to bus- or business from copying or using such work for commercial purpose. Many other forms of protection also flow from copyright ownership. While copyright may protect original work, there are certain work products that cannot be protected. Among these are ideas, facts, commonly known information, and work that has not been fixed in some material form, such as a recording made in some permanent digital form. To be considered the original, work must have been created by author, not copied from any other source, and production of the original work occurs automatically upon its creation. Registration of copyright is available but optional at the discretion of the owner and is not required in order to enforce right in an original work. What it does provide is evidence of the existence of copyright and ownership as of registration. So in 2019 to 2020, 8,700 copyright applications were filed in the Canadian Intellectual Property Office between 2005, 15 and 2020. 44,000 applications were filed. Annual average is 8,800 applications a year. Now let's go to detail. Real property. This lecture we will take example of fictional character. We call it Xander. Xander was in the last semester of two-year music program at her college. She had taken piano lessons for 14 years and guitar lessons for 10. Her passion, however, was according to accordion. She had been learning to play it for last 3 years and loved the sound and feel the instrument. Xander wanted to share her enthusiasm for the accordion. Unfortunately, not many openings for professional accordion players existed in the city when she was studying. Not a single orchestra had answered her application, and the offers from bands and music stores responded to the request for employment, but not very long hours or very little hours or no pay. But Xander would not give up. She had taught some classmates on how to play piano and guitar. They had told she was an excellent instructor. One of the classmates she had instructed won a scholarship study guitar upon completing the music program. So Zenda thought if she was going to put the effort, it might as well be for herself. She decided to put together a business plan using some money from a small inheritance she had received from her uncle. So try to understand this concept in the real property. First thing Xander determined she needed was a place where she could provide music lessons to her student. After doing some research, she realized that she had a few options. One possibility would buy a house and renovate a couple of rooms to use for teaching music. The other possibility would be to rent or lease a space in a building and fix it up as a music studio and classroom. Zenda knew that almost every business required real property in some form to operate. Real property is usually referred to as real estate and is generally defined as the land and building, including all these fixtures. Fixtures are the items considered permanently attached to the building or land, such as fences, in-ground pools, central air conditioning units, and so on. So, ability to make laws for the purchase, sale, and use real estate is within the powers of the province and territories. All land is owned by the government and referred to as crown land. The crown grants the free simple interest in real property to an individual or corporation. Title or ownership of the land is then shown to belonging to the individual along with rights that come from holding title. This is fee simple ownership. This fee simple ownership is the greatest interest in land possible and includes the right to use or occupy the land or to grant some rights to the property, for example, possession under a leasing agreement, as well as the right to buy, sell, and use the land as security to borrow money or pass to another person through a will. Most people understand a fee simple interest as ownership. So, for this chapter, we will use the term ownership. You know, this is the trivia we can understand. Joint tenants does not mean renters living in some joint. Generally, the title to real property in Canada, when owned by more than one individual, is held either as joint tenants or as tenants in common. Joint tenancy is a form of shared ownership of real estate that creates an equal and undivided ownership in the property as a whole. On the death of the other joint tenants, the survivor is entitled to full ownership of the property. If real estate is owned as tenant in common, each individual owns individual undivided interest in the property, whether it be a half interest or some other percentage that belongs exclusively to them. On death, that individual's interest will become part of their estate and be dealt with through their will. Do you know? Regulations govern the registration of corporation intending to own real estate. In some provinces, a corporation that intends to own real estate must be registered in that province or have a provincial license for that purpose. This is to seek advice from a lawyer in these circumstances. Recording ownership interest in real property. The names of all lawyers of land in Canada are recorded under registration system maintained by each province or territory. Two primary systems are registry system and land title system. The registry system merely record the documents that have been registered that affect the land under the provincial system. It does not validate or confirm ownership. The purchaser is required to check the validity of the seller's authority to sell the land by searching government files. Land title system. The land title system operated by government guarantees the accuracy of title to the land subject to certain statutory limits. Documents registered under these systems are checked to ensure they accurately reflect ownership. If an error is made that causes a party to experience a financial loss, that party may file a claim for compensation from a government administrator insurance fund. It is recommended that in purchase of real property, a lawyer be retained to perform the necessary searches to ensure that title to the property is accurate and clear of any encumbrances. You know, the land title system of land registration is also referred as torrent system. Land ownership gives rise to certain taxes at the provincial and municipal level of government. At the time of purchasing real property, a land transfer tax based on a percentage of purchase price of the property is charged by the provincial or territorial and possibly municipal level of government. Oh, so you understand you have to pay money. GST and capital gains tax may apply to the sale of commercial real estate. The transfer of commercial building will be subject to goods and service tax, GST, or in certain provinces, the HST. along with any capital gain tax that may arise from the sale if real estate categorized as capital property. Regulations of the use of real property is done primarily through zoning bylaws and building bylaws that control the property activity, the land can be used, and nature of the building and structures that can be erected. These regulations are created at the provincial and municipal levels. Zoning regulations determine matters such as whether land can be used for operating a business or only for single family residence housing, as well as the number of stories a building may have. Before starting construction, a new building or renovations to alter the new than existing structure, building permits must be obtained and permit fee paid to the municipality or province. Building code standards will apply to determine, for example, the type of material to be used in construction, the water and sewage system to be installed, and heating system, among other things. Provincial environmental legislation may need to be considered to avoid environmental issues that may restrict the use of land, for example, noise control or air emission. Likewise, a license from provincial municipal authority may be required for intended use of the property, such as operating restaurant or hotel. The current owner of property is responsible for cleaning up any environmental problem involving the land. Prior to purchase, it is strongly recommended for the future owner to request to have environmental audit done. Understand mortgages and real property. Although Xander has a small inheritance to use for her business purpose, but it is not enough to purchase a real property without finding more money to fund the transaction. In this case, Xander could discuss getting a mortgage, a loan secured by property with a financial institution or private lender. The term mortgage under the older registry system for loans secured by the real property. Under the land title system, the term charge is used. And hypothec is the term used to describe a mortgage arrangement in Quebec. To understand a mortgage is a debt secured by real property to ensure the repayment of the loan, whether for a set amount of money or a line of credit to the mortgage. This is the lender. The person borrowing the fund referred to as mortgator. The mortgagee is an agreement between the mortgator and mortgagee to borrow funds for a particular period of time, usually 1 to 5 years, known as mortgage term. Several conditions usually attached to the loan agreement, primarily the obligation to make the monthly payment to the loan. Generally, repayment of the mortgage loan is made monthly or bi-weekly through blended payments of principal, the amount of money borrowed, and interest on the loan. The amount of blended payment is determined by amortization period applied to the loan. Amo- uh, Amortization period is the length of the time required to pay the entire debt, principal and interest over a specified period of time. Usually, a 25 to or 20 years period is chosen in order to arrive a monthly payment amount that can be maintained by the borrower or mortgager. What is an amortization period? The length of time it takes to repay a mortgage loan in full following the schedule of payment set out in the mortgage. Acceleration clause is the term, the mortgage agreement that permits the mortgage to demand it immediate payment of the full amount on the loan in the event of default. Power of sale, a remedy available to the lender under a mortgage allowing the sale of the real property in case of default. Foreclosure is court condition that court action following which the lender obtains legal title to real property after default by borrower under a mortgage. Judicial sale, it's a court ordered and administered sale of property after default under a mortgage. Funds from the sale are applied to the outstanding debt. The borrower is personally liable to pay any additional money towards the debt. Commercial lease, the rules under which commercial tenancy operates are very different from the rules governing a residential tenancy relationship. Each province has legislation that regulates many of the elements of the landlord-tenant relationship in a commercial setting. For example, in Ontario, the Commercial Tenancy Act governs commercial tenancies. This act contains many differences from the law. It is applied to residential tenancies. There is also significant amount of case law that developed around the rights and remedies of landlords and tenants under a commercial license. Lease, leases are usually referred to as fixed tenancy, which are for a specific period of time, such as 1 year to five, as periodic tenancy, which are for an indeterminate period of time. In periodic tenancy agreement, the lease continues until either the landlord or tenant provides a notice of termination. Provincial or territorial legislation, and usually the lease itself sells, sets out the period of time required for proper notice to be given. The timing and form of notice indicated should be carefully followed the effective termination of lease agreement. Types of commercial leases: a net lease, in which tenants pay fixed amount rent as well as percentage share of the landlord's expenses relating to the operation. A lease under which, and in addition to the payments made under a net lease, tenants pay structural repairs to the premises as well. Gross lease, in which tenants pay a fixed amount as rent on a regular basis, and semi-gross lease, under which the landlord assumes responsibility for certain expenses under the base rent received from the tenants. Lease provisions, quiet enjoyment. The right of the leasee to occupy and use the leased premises without interference by the landlord. An owner may sublet all or part of the lease from premises to other people to cut expenses. The tenant can transfer the balance of the term under the lease by assignment to another party. Lease provisions, right of distress. The right of a commercial landlord to seize and dispose the tenant's property following non-payment of rent, right or right of fortif- forfeiture. The landlord's remedy of evicting the tenant for breach of an obligation under the lease. Now understand personal property. Let's take a 2 minutes break and then we'll continue the personal property. Correct. Let's understand personal property. It is classified as a tangible item, that is, cars, computers, or intangible assets, that is, checks, trademarks. Rights over property depends on whether the goods are owned by the organization or simply in its possession. Personal property, understand what is bailment, bailer, and bailee. Bailment is the legal relationship that arises when the elements of ownership and possession of personal property are intentionally divided for a period of time. Bailer is the owner of goods under a bailment, and bailee, the person possession in possession of goods under a bailment. A bailment for reward is one in which consideration is exchanged between the parties. An example of this is rental agreement. This is the most common form of payment. It includes arrangements such as the rental of water coolers, cars, rug cleaning, equipment, computers, and photocopiers, among other items. The common law standard of care is usually that by which reasonably diligent person would take care of the goods in the circumstances. Generally, this is the same standard as the reasonable person standard in tort law. For example, if Xander, the baby, rents guitar from musical instrument in the bedroom and to use teaching her students, there's an implied term that goods will be reusable for the purpose for which they are being provided. If the bridge on guitar snapped because it had stress cracked and had not been checked by the baler before being rented to Xander, and the student's eye was injured by a guitar string when the bridge snapped, the bearer would generally be responsible for any losses suffered by Xander if the student sued for the damage. Likewise, although the bailee generally not liable for any ordinary wear and tear on rented equipment under a bailment for reward, Xander has a duty to care of the goods and could be sued by the bailer if goods are damaged by over enthusiastic student while in her possession. Bailment for reward consignment. Consignment is a bailment for reward. If the term is not eventually sold, if the item is not eventually sold, it is returned to the owner. The owner of the instrument is the bailer, and in our running example, Xander's studio is the bailee under the arrangement. Unless the arrangement between the parties states otherwise, the standard of care is, is the same as outlined above, as the baby must exercise the care with an ordinary person would take of goods in the circumstances. Bailment of repairs. Bailment of repairs of service is when the bailer pays the bailee the provided for providing a service. The bailee must take the repairs in skillful manner under a contract of repair. Personal property as security of debt. Rather than a bailment arrangement, Goods can be used as security for the repayment of debt. Installment payment. A vendor will often sell its interests under the lease to a financing company. The financing company holds title to the goods and receives the lease payments until the purchase option is exercised at the end of the lease. Understand intellectual property? Intangible personal properties are copyright, trademark, patent, industrial design, trade secrets. Copyright is statutory collection of intellectual property rights of creators of musical, dramatic, literary, and artistic work and software. Trademarks, identifiable feature used to distinguish the goods or services of a business to form those offered by another. A word, a symbol, or design that is distinguishes the source of particular source or type. Registration under the Federal Trademark Act is not required for a trademark to be protected. License, a contractual right to use a trademark, copyright, patent, industrial design, or trade secret for a specified limited purpose and time. Patents are statutory grants of exclusive right to make, sell, and use an invention within the jurisdiction in which it's granted. An inventor could sell the patents and assign ownership to other party. An inventor can retain ownership of the patent and license the patent rights to exchange to a royalty on sales. Industrial design, unique visual elements incorporated as a part of manufacture process design and feature of shape, configuration, patterns, or ornament can be example. Trade secrets are confidential information regarding a product or production process that has commercial value to the owner. NDA, non-disclosure agreement, contracts between two or more parties to maintain information exchanged between them confidential. Now, there are some questions that we might need to understand. What is property law? What is a lien on personal property considered to be affected? Who is responsible for the cost of cleaning up pre-existing environmental problem following the sale of property? Try to understand we might face these challenges. And yes, you might see some of the case studies, and we are going to watch one of the case study now. Give me 2 minutes, let me play it here. Now we understand these topics, and maybe we can spend few more minutes to understand all of these aspects. If you go to this McGraw-Hill textbook, you will realize that there are many case studies to make you understand these topics well. Or if you have any question, make sure you contact me using any of the method like message or email. So let's quickly revise these terms. Number one, what is real property? Land, including everything attached to it. Personal property, all property that is not real property. Tangible personal property, things that can be touched are movable. Intangible personal property, things that cannot be physically touched. Intellectual property, a type of personal property resulting from an individual's creative activities. Fee simple ownership, the most absolute form of land ownership in Canada. The history system, a system of land registration operated by provincial government to record interest in land. Land title system, a system of land registration under which the provincial government guarantees the accuracy of the title of the land. Mortgage is a term, is a debt using real property as security. Line of credit, a debt arrangement under which a lender agrees to make a maximum amount of money available to a borrower. Amortization period, the length of time it takes to repay a mortgage loan in full following the schedule of payments set out in the mortgage. Power of sale, a remedy available to the lender under a mortgage allowing a sale of the real property in case of default. Foreclosure, a court action following which the lender obtains legal title to the real property after default by borrower under a mortgage. Judicial sale, a court order and administrated sale of property after default under a mortgage. Fixed tenancy, a tenancy that has a fixed beginning and end date that can be for any period of time from months to years. Periodic tenancy, a tenancy that renews automatically at the end of the relevant rental period until terminated by the landlord or the tenant. Quiet enjoyment, the right of leasee to occupy the leased premises without interference by the landlord. Sublet, an arrangement under which the tenant leaves a leased space for a specified period of time and allows other person to occupy the leased space until the tenant's return to resume occupancy. Assignment, an arrangement under which the tenant transferred the tenancy to another person the, for the balance of the term of the lease. Right of distress, the right of a commercial landlord to seize and dispose tenant's property following non-payment of rent, and right of forfeiture, the landlord's remedy for evicting the tenants for breach of obligation under the lease, and bailment, the legal and bailment is the legal relationship that arise when the elements of ownership and possession of personal property are intentionally divided for a period of time. That's all for personal property. See you next week.